In the still of the night, while the world lay silent and unaware, she ended his life. Not in anger, not in chaos, but in eerie, calculated calm. They looked perfect. Rachel and Thomas Miller were the couple others wanted to be. Church-going, family-oriented, high school sweethearts who built a life together in a quiet suburban town. A neat lawn, 2 beautiful kids, a chocolate lab named Daisy. Smiling family photos hung on every wall. To outsiders, they were a postcard. Thomas was the respected youth pastor at Grace Fellowship Church. He was charming, articulate, a pillar of the community. He spoke of faith, family, and forgiveness. Rachel, she was the loyal wife. A homemaker. Reserved. Sweet. Always polite, always smiling. But inside the Miller home, the picture-perfect life was just a frame. And behind it, the glass was cracking. Because behind closed doors, Rachel was vanishing. In the beginning, Rachel was vibrant. She painted. She wrote poetry. She dreamed of opening her own design studio. But slowly, those dreams were pushed aside. First, it was her friends. Thomas called them worldly influences. One by one, they disappeared from her life. Then came the finances. Thomas insisted they live by biblical stewardship. But what it really meant was control. Rachel had no access to their accounts. Her car keys were kept in his office drawer. Even her phone had parental filters. He monitored everything. Calls. Messages. Her browsing history. And Rachel, sweet, quiet Rachel, convinced herself it was love. That obedience meant harmony. That submission was holy. But Thomas didn't just want obedience. He wanted silence. Total silence. Then a voice. Love doesn't feel like a cage until the door locks behind you. She tried to speak up once, during a church couples retreat. In a group session, she gently mentioned that sometimes she felt lonely. Thomas squeezed her hand tightly under the table. Too tightly. That night, he didn't speak to her. For 3 days. And she never brought it up again. The loneliness was quiet, but suffocating. Days blurred into nights. Her identity faded. Her laughter disappeared. Even her reflection in the mirror began to look like a stranger. But no one saw it. To the world, Thomas was the ideal husband. He praised Rachel from the pulpit. Called her God's greatest blessing. And Rachel smiled, just as she was expected to. But deep inside, a storm was building. Notebook in her secret journal, hidden in a showbox behind the laundry detergent, she wrote, "I'm alive, but not living. Breathing, but not feeling. I wonder how it would feel to just disappear." She wasn't planning murder. Not yet. But every day, something in her was dying. And on a warm July night, everything would change. Forever. Rachel Miller wasn't always quiet. In college, she was the loudest laugh in the room, bright-eyed, brilliant, a theater major with a love for poetry. That spark dimmed the moment she married Thomas. It started subtly. He didn't like her old friends, too worldly. He asked her to delete her Instagram. "It's causing temptation," he said. Then he began managing their finances. Rachel's allowance was transferred weekly. No credit cards, no personal spending. At first, she chalked it up to love. He's just protective, she'd tell her sister. But it wasn't love. It was domination dressed in scripture. Thomas often quoted Ephesians, "Wives, submit to your husbands." His sermons reinforced obedience. At home, Rachel had no voice. He didn't need fists. His words did enough damage. He'd say, "You sound stupid when you talk politics. No man would ever want you again. I rescued you. Without me, you'd be nothing." She stopped correcting him. She stopped disagreeing. She stopped being. The first time Ethan messaged Rachel, she almost didn't reply. An old classmate, now divorced, living in Seattle. She said hi. That was all. But he kept talking. And for once, someone listened. Ethan remembered her poems. He asked about her dreams. He made her laugh, something she hadn't done in years. It was virtual at first. Then phone calls. Then, a coffee shop. Then, a hotel. She felt alive. And then came the guilt. Rachel confessed to Thomas 1 month later, sobbing, shaking, remorseful. She was ready to leave, but he wouldn't let her. He said, "You owe me your loyalty now more than ever." What followed wasn't reconciliation. It was punishment. Silent, calculated punishment. He cancelled her therapy. Told the church she was struggling spiritually. He began locking their bedroom door. She was exiled to the couch. No bruises. Just emotional strangulation. By the second year after the affair, Rachel barely spoke at all. Her hair thinned. Her eyes dimmed. She journaled in secret, because speaking aloud meant confrontation. In her diary, one entry read, "I dream of silence. Not because I like it, but because in silence, I don't disappoint anyone." Thomas continued preaching. The community still adored him. At home, he barely acknowledged Rachel's existence. Until one day, she overheard something that changed everything. Thomas was in the backyard with their 10-year-old son, Micah. She heard Thomas say, "Your mom is a disgrace. She broke our family. She's lucky I don't leave her." Micah didn't respond. He just nodded. Rachel cried in the laundry room for hours. That night, something inside her cracked. July the 12th, 2022. Dinner was meatloaf. Thomas said nothing. Rachel washed the dishes. The children watched cartoons. Everything was numbingly normal. At 10:30 p.m., Rachel tucked in Micah and Ella. She read Goodnight Moon and kissed their foreheads. She whispered, "I love you more than anything." At 11:04 p.m., she stood in the kitchen holding a chef's knife. Her journal sat open on the table. She read the last entry. "I don't want him to suffer. I just want to disappear. But if I leave, he'll take the kids. If I stay, I'll lose myself completely." She walked down the hall. Thomas was asleep, snoring softly. Headphones on. Bible app open on his phone. She stood over him for 6 minutes. Her hand shook. Her breathing was shallow. Then, one swift motion. The first stab was silent. The second was not. Thomas gasped. Eyes opened. Then closed. A third plunge. Blood soaked the sheets. He stopped moving. Rachel sat on the floor for 15 minutes. Then she picked up the phone. Her voice on the 911 call is calm, eerily calm. "I stabbed my husband. He's dead. I think he deserved it. Please come." There's a moment when silence stops being peaceful and starts sounding like a scream. The kids were asleep. The house was still. And Rachel Miller, wife, mother, captive, stood barefoot in the kitchen holding the largest knife from the drawer. Her fingers trembled. Not from fear, but from exhaustion. She had spent 12 years hiding bruises that never showed. 12 years apologizing for being human. 12 years trying to shrink small enough to fit inside the mold Thomas carved for her. And now, there was only one place left to go. She walked toward his bedroom. Thomas was snoring. Deep, unbothered. Bible app open. Worship music in his ears. He'd spent the day telling their son that his mother was a failure. A disgrace. A sinner. Rachel stood over him. Not weeping. Not screaming. Just breathing. In that moment, it wasn't rage. It was release. The first stab, just beneath his collarbone. His eyes shot open, but his voice never came. Dagger hash the second, lower, near the ribs. A gurgling noise. He reached up, but weakly. Dagger hash the third, right into his chest. His eyes went wide, then empty. Blood soaked the sheets. Her hands. The knife. Her silence, now red. She dropped the blade. Then sat on the edge of the bed for 13 minutes. She stared at nothing. Her body still. Her mind, finally quiet. At 11:36 p.m., Rachel picked up the phone. Telephone receiver 911 operator. 911, what's your emergency? Telephone receiver Rachel, calmly I stabbed my husband. He's not moving. I think I killed him. Telephone receiver 911 operator. Is he breathing? Telephone receiver Rachel, no. I think he deserved it. I need someone to come get me, please. The police arrived in 10 minutes. Rachel opened the door and turned around, hands already behind her back. She asked if they could check on the children. They are sleeping. Please don't wake them if you don't have to. The officers found Thomas dead in bed. Rachel was arrested, booked, and placed in a holding cell. Her mugshot was plastered on every news site by morning. The interrogation. Detective Sarah Green sat across from Rachel for 5 hours. Rachel never cried. She said, "He broke me so quietly, no one heard it happen. So I made a noise no one could ignore." Her journal was submitted as evidence. Page after page revealed her dissent. Quotes from sermons twisted against her. Notes about his silence, his control, the threats without violence. There were no bruises. But the wounds were real. The trial. Prosecutors called it premeditated murder. But the defense brought in experts on coercive control, psychological abuse, and battered woman syndrome. The jury deliberated for 12 hours. Rachel Miller was convicted of voluntary manslaughter, not murder. 10 years in prison. Parole eligibility in 5. Rachel didn't run. She didn't hide. She never denied what she did. But what she never got was someone asking why, until it was too late. Today, Rachel is 3 years into her sentence. She's studying psychology through a prison education program. She leads a writing group for women who survived emotional abuse. Her kids visit twice a month. They are in the care of her sister. Her story has sparked controversy, sympathy, outrage, debate. Was she a victim who snapped? Or a murderer who chose violence? Or both? This story isn't about excusing what Rachel did. It's about recognizing the invisible prisons some people live in, and the danger of letting silence fester until it becomes a scream. If you or someone you know is living in fear or emotional control, reach out. Don't wait for the silence to kill. White heavy checkmark, like, comment, and subscribe to True Crime Hub. Let us know in the comments. White right pointing backhand index, was Rachel justified? White right pointing backhand index, could this have been prevented? White right pointing backhand index, what does justice mean in a case like this? Belmore haunting, heartbreaking, and thought-provoking true crime stories every week. Stay tuned.